Alrighty, hi guys. Welcome to another episode of the Marine Bio Movie Club. We are so excited to have you here today. We are going to be discussing probably one of the most iconic marine biology related movies of all time, Jaws. I know I have some opinions, so we can get into those, but we're really excited. Essentially, if you haven't seen Jaws, surprisingly, neither of us had actually watched the whole thing prior to this, is in essence a movie about a rogue killer shark that comes to the beaches of what I found out to actually be a fictional island. I was like, where is Amity Island? But it's basically based in like Cape Cod kind of region. And a great white shark comes and is terrorizing the 4th of July celebration of this tiny little island. So opens up with kind of that iconic famous scene of the young girl that goes skinny dipping, drunk dude, doesn't even make it in the water.
That part was funny.
I was like, oh.
Actually, the whole movie was funny, but
yeah, and to your point, yeah, the whole movie is, I mean, the movie was made in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So I give them a lot of credit for like the special effects that they did have. And that was one of the things that made the movie so groundbreaking at the time, is because the special effects were like insane for what was being shown at the time, you know?
Yeah.
Based on today's standards and what we know about the sharks and animals and all of that, definitely
Not as groundbreaking.
no. Definitely not. The way that she was being dragged around in the water, I was like, this is not how this would go.
It looked like at SeaWorld in those places where they'll have like the dolphin pushing on their feet. It looked like it was just like pushing her around, like just exactly like that.
Exactly. And she was getting like dragged back and forth and up and down, and the blood is like spewing out of the water. And I was just like, no wonder people are freaking scared of sharks. If this is how they think, if this is what they think happens when they're bitten by a shark,
they're just gonna maul you and then drag you down after you've screamed for 5 minutes.
It was wild. But
the fact that the guy too was just laying there as she's like screaming her head off, yeah. I was like, this so is blacked funny.
Out. I mean, yeah, super. The guy was like incoherent, but yeah. So the first murder or whatever happens, and that's what kind of sets off, I guess, this like wild goose chase for the shark. And I kept like noting, I was like, this body of water straight up looks like a lake to start with. Yeah. I'm sure that's a lot of just like where they were filming for the movie. But all these like attack scenes were happening with this later claimed to be like 22, 25 foot shark in like 3 feet of water.
Yeah, that was my thought. And I know that some sharks will come up pretty close, but with the shark they're talking about, the whole time I was like, this wouldn't be coming in that close.
Well, and they did make a claim later on in the movie when the scientist finally shows up, where some guy says something like, it was almost like a side-handed comment, but it caught my attention. The guy goes, don't like 95% of shark attacks happen in like knee-deep water, or shark bites happen in knee-deep water? And I'm like, yeah, that's probably true, because like 95% of shark bites occur in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, with like little bull sharks or little black tip sharks, things like that. But yeah, it was just, it's like, this is not super accurate habitat for species, you know, like,
yeah,
great whites in Cape Cod offshore.
Yeah, they're not
roaming 3 feet water.
Yeah, and like videos of great whites, I feel like quote closer to shore, usually around like a surf break, like from videos I've seen.
Yeah, or at least like in California, it gets deeper quicker.
Yeah, That
So
looked,
it's
yeah, it looked
more
very
likely
shallow.
for them to come closer into shore. Yeah. And it was interesting because in the movie, it was almost like this sort of like Inception moment in a way, because the when the cop or the sheriff goes up to the mayor and is like, we have to close the beach, there's a shark, like we have to tell people there's a shark, we need to close the beach. The mayor looks at him and is like, you can't just be saying shark. Do you know the kind of panic
Mhm.
that will ensue if you claim there's a shark in the water? And I thought it was super ironic because this movie was kind of, I wouldn't say the very first, it's obviously not the first time we'd ever heard of a shark,
Yeah.
but this movie was kind of the antithesis to this whole like fear-based media on sharks.
Deadly, evil, man-eating shark
Yeah, like this was sort of
frenzy.
what started that, and it was kind of, I thought it was super ironic in the movie that they almost acknowledged that
Yeah.
or predict it in a way through what the share or yeah. But it was just definitely interesting to sort of be like, you know what I mean, like Steven Spielberg knew this was going to scare people.
Yeah. I mean,
Since,
is it technically a horror film? Give me your
I mean,
genre.
it's definitely not a horror film to the standards of what we would consider a horror film nowadays.
But yeah, it says horror adventure is the main two. There's also
Interesting.
comedy. Good. I'm glad that's included because I found it all to be very funny.
Yeah. I found it to be extremely comical.
It was so funny.
Way more comical than horrifying.
Yeah, I was like, if younger me had watched this, I probably would have like been intimidated. I was terrified of sharks for a long time. Like, could not watch anything with sharks. I would like freeze up. I hated the movie Soul Surfer, all that kind of stuff.
It's not even that big part of the movie.
It's not, but it scared me. I was like, I don't want to think about sharks. Um, but past that, I was laughing at so many parts of this movie. It was
Yeah, it was rough for sure. For
oh.
sure was rough. They did say something, I forget who said it, how splashing can like you swimming around
It
splashing in
was,
shallow water is exactly what attracts sharks.
yeah, it was the biologist when they were like looking at the painted mural and they were trying to
Mm,
get the mayor again to like close the beach.
yeah,
And he was like, having a bunch of people swimming around on the 4th of July, that's exactly what attracts the sharks, is all
the
those people
splashing and all that kind
splashing.
of stuff.
Yeah.
And obviously, like that is one of the safety rules that we have out here. Like, try not to splash, don't make a bunch of excess noise at the surface because it can increase their attention. The way they got it a little bit twisted though is they kept saying the shark is going to stick around until there's no more food left for them. And I'm like, sharks don't eat people.
Yeah, like the basis of your argument is flawed because they shouldn't be
Yeah.
eating people. They usually don't eat people.
There have historically been rogue sharks
Yeah.
where we've seen one individual bite two or three people in the same area. Um, most of those situations are a juvenile individual or a really emaciated individual that's
Yeah.
compromised in one way or another and is like, I'm just looking to eat anything and the swimmers happen to be here kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean he's right. Yeah, technically splashing can increase sharks' attention. But it's also just one of those, it's such a skewed, just the premise of the movie, and we can move past this after this point. Just the premise of the movie is so flawed when you realistically think about how many people, trillions of people, go to the beach around the world every single day
Aren't eaten by a shark.
and aren't eaten by sharks. If anything, aren't even bitten by sharks.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many statistics out there and we won't harp on them, but you're so much more likely to die from so many more things. than you are from a shark. It's not to say that sharks can't be dangerous animals. Obviously,
Yeah.
they're still capable predators, but they're also not the monsters depicted in this movie.
Well, there's so many animals too that have like recorded
but
attacking humans that
dogs.
humans aren't as scared of. I mean, there's like those 2 male lions in Africa that like killed a bunch of people. And there's a whole, that's an interesting movie if people haven't seen that.
Well,
But they like
your
went
dog in
after
your
and
house is
killed
probably more
humans.
likely to kill you than a shark is.
Yeah. We're just
So, yeah,
walking down the street, right? Driving in your car.
Yeah, so the movie as a whole is just problematic.
Yeah.
In so many ways. But yeah, so they try and convince the mayor. He's basically like, I care more about money than the safety of my community. Surprise,
I think
surprise.
that their attempt to show him as rich was just ugly suits that were like really flamboyant, which I kept writing down like, what is he wearing? Why is he wearing these suits? And I wrote him as like mafia boss mayor because he like had like the full like Italian mafia boss in that era vibe. I was like,
Yeah.
is he from The Godfather? We just plop him in this movie.
Yeah. Well, Connor was like, babe, I kind of look like this sheriff guy. We could totally go as the sheriff and the shark for Halloween. Like, if you wanna, I'll be the shark.
That's really funny.
But yeah, so the scientist comes to town. We kind of skipped over that. So I will say I'm like glad they made an attempt in the movie to like kind of hire a professional or an expert or whatever it is. But
he's yeah.
I mean, okay.
He was interesting.
Did we know a lot less about sharks in the 70s? Sure. He clearly, I believe, was not a representative of an accurate shark scientist at the time.
Well, he said that a 4.5-foot thresher shark ate his boat.
Oh, as a kid or whatever?
As a kid, that's what inspired him to study sharks, was a baby thresher shark eating his boat. A shark the size of like a sandbar eating his boat.
Their mouths are small.
They are. Thresher sharks' mouths are not like
if you've ever seen a shark, they've got these big old eyeballs and these tiny
insert silly
heads.
thresher shark picture.
Yeah, they are not, because they hunt with their tail, they don't have these like huge mouths that they eat stuff with, because by the time things reach their mouth, they're not moving.
Yeah.
But
you just gotta suck it in. But it ate his boat.
Oh yeah.
Because sharks also just eat boats.
They depict, so that's kind of where the behavioral aspect comes in a little bit. The depiction of sharks just throughout this movie, and it is for that horror aspect, right? Like that's the villain of the movie, that's the monster in the movie. We've already said like a million times they're not monsters. There's this very big misunderstanding though that's represented throughout the movie, that sharks actively hunt people, that sharks are inherently aggressive animals that go after whatever they see. When they pull up the tiger shark, and we'll get on into that in a second, they are talking about how they eat anything in sight and like all this sort of stuff. And that's just so behaviorally untrue of sharks. And again, not puppy dogs, still very capable predators. They can be dangerous animals, but they're not mindless eating machines.
Yeah.
They're quite picky, actually, in that they eat the sick, the injured animals. I've seen sharks swim by healthy fish all day, almost every day, without giving a crap about them. And then the moment they see one of those fish that's injured or bleeding or anything like that, then they're like, "Whoa!" You see that switch, you know? And so the movie is based on the idea that they are those sort of mindless animals, and that's just not true.
They crave mammal flesh.
Sheriff goes home, he's like all interested in sharks, he's reading this book, and it had a picture of like the lateral line and the ampullae of Lorenzini, so I was like, cool. You're acknowledging that they have some cool senses. Probably skewing it as like they can feel your heartbeat from a mile away. Like,
Yeah. Well, then it was like
definitely
focusing on like the
dramatized them.
pictures of like great whites, and
Yeah.
then the one of the shark eating the boat and the mom freaking out.
Yeah. Well, the mom, for a while, she's like, honey, you're being unreasonable. Like, let them go at least on a boat or at least hang out close to shore. They're in 2 feet of water. Like, they're fine. And then she like looks at one picture of a shark
It's like
eating
an
like an
ancient art
old
piece.
sailor, like one of those paintings you see of like old sailors from like myth of a shark eating its boat. And then she's
Like
like,
sea
oh,
serpents. It
never
looked
mind,
just like
never
those.
mind.
Yeah.
They tried to educate themselves, I guess.
Yeah.
The source or the scientist that ended up coming was not ideal.
He's not an
The
accurate
fact that he's like
representation of a
all
shark
gung ho to
researcher.
kill this shark, I'm like, okay, that's not. I don't know many shark scientists that would be like stoked.
Yeah, my favorite part was when he was rich. I like texted you and I was like, this is the most inaccurate detail of this movie, that he is rich. And then like there was someone,
A
he was
marine
just like,
biologist, rich.
yeah, and the guy was like, why do they pay you so much? I wanted him to be like, oh no, like I thought he'd be like, I'm joking. No, he was just like was like, no, I'm rich. I was like, what? How?
Like, okay.
Doing what?
They did kind of insinuate it might be like family money,
Yeah.
but it also sounded like Noah was like paying him the big bucks because
he's
he's
like
such this
the
good
shark
shark
researcher.
scientist. And I'm like, even if you were the best,
The head honcho at the, you would not.
you're still not like, you ain't no millionaire guy. You
No.
ain't that boat that you're on, you didn't buy it.
That was a nice boat.
It was a nice. Why didn't they take that boat?
I don't know, that it started to turn into like a Moby Dick vibe, which
Very
I
Moby
love
Dick.
literature. I love Moby Dick. Unironically, I genuinely love that book. And so the whole time I was just like, this is so Hamish, or not Hamish. I almost said Hamish.
It is super Moby Dick vibes. They also make some claim in there that sharks live 2,000 to 3,000 years, and I was like,
he was like, we don't even know how long they live.
I'm like, actually, we do.
They could live this
Not
long.
that long. I'm like, you've got your Greenland sharks that have been like recorded over 400 years or something stupid, but
Yeah.
that is the one or two, like two species that are
The like Arctic species that we rarely see. And
I'm like, we know it's not 3,000 years. And they have this meeting and they're basically like, what are we going to do?
why did he get their attention by scratching the board?
Oh,
That part was so funny. I was like, there's nothing more
just,
effective. You're just angsty man in the background. I
I
was like,
it was probably to like add to that horror effect, you know, that like creepy noise. He's a creepy dude. He's some like old weird fisherman guy.
and he drew
I'm like, I've met 20 of those dudes at the harbor. Not scary.
they just have to scratch on a green board. Then you'll feel it.
But I wrote down in all caps, clowns fishing for sharks for reward. Because most of them, I mean, the idea of fishing for sharks, and we'll talk about this in a second, the movie is extremely problematic from basically this part on, if it wasn't already. But I was like, they don't know what they're doing. Clearly, they're getting in like dinghies to reel in what's supposed to be a huge shark.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, good. And I think that was kind of the point. Like, it was supposed to sort of be this comical, like,
they're just desperate for the money.
Do what they can, you know, yeah. But the movie, the reason I consider the movie so problematic from here on is because it essentially glorifies the idea of culling. Which, if you don't know what culling is, it happens a lot when, like, it still occurs quite a bit in Australia, actually.
Yeah.
It happened here in Hawaii in the 80s really heavily. That was the last time it's occurred here. But the idea is that if someone was bit by a shark, for the next week or so, everyone goes out and just kills as many sharks as they can find. Now, obviously, in the movie, they are aiming for a specific shark. they're not just looking to kill any shark they can find. But they're to the point the movie made, as they clearly reeled in the wrong shark.
Yeah.
Which they now correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's no tiger sharks in Cape Cod.
No, that was my thought. And the biologist said later that it came up the Gulf Stream or something. That was like his excuse for how the shark got there, and then it pulled out a license plate from Louisiana.
So according to the interwebs, there is maybe 1 or 2 instances where a tagged tiger shark did travel all the way up to Cape Cod. So it's not impossible, highly unlikely, that you would have a tiger in those waters, as they typically are a tropical based species and prefer warmer environments than the Northeast tends to provide. So the fact that they found a tiger, especially one of the size that they did, is just highly unlikely.
They're probably just picking a scary shark. I mean,
100%.
I wonder where they filmed it, if that was just one they had
probably Universal Studios in Florida.
Oh yeah, that was insane. Like I would guess they're in Florida or something. Like that would be where they filmed it to get this tiger shark.
And
because it was real.
Which just really sucks.
Yeah.
Just really sucks. Obviously, this movie was forever ago. That shark would probably be long dead by now if it had lived, but it was a big individual that it was real. And it just sucks. It just sucks. Yeah. And I mean, I pray that they got it from some I don't know. I pray that it wasn't just they went out and fished for an animal just to kill it.
Maybe someone caught something and they just used it.
But I really doubt it.
I was gonna say their great white scene later on didn't seem the most animal friendly. Bless you. So
the whole movie is about killing sharks.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard.
So it's not like they're pushing this narrative of like, oh, we're trying to protect the animal. No, there was no disclaimer. No animals are harmed in the making of this film. And that's probably not the goal of the film at the time. And guaranteed Spielberg was like, I want it to look as real as possible. Like he was clearly trying to push the special effects to make it appear very real. So having a real dead shark, because it's easier to have a real dead animal than a real alive animal, obviously. It makes sense why he made that choice for the movie, but it just sucks to see, I don't care. Like, maybe if you don't care about sharks, it doesn't bother you.
Well, I just think, like, what if it was a movie about whaling and they like actually killed a whale and had a dead whale? Like if it was a different animal, just because it's like a fish. Response. Yeah.
And I mean, if they were filming in Florida, we know that like wouldn't have been that hard to convince somebody to go kill a shark for a movie.
Shark fishing tourism is still
it's still
it's still legal, right?
Super big.
Yeah. I've never been to Florida. Well, yes, I have. I've been to Disney World.
It's a big issue still. Trying to work on some projects to hopefully help with that, but they're still in the works.
How's your favorite company that like to message you still and be a
they
dick?
have been leaving me alone.
That's good.
So that's nice. Doesn't mean I forgot about those fuckers though. So I'm just waiting in the window. I'm sitting in the attic waiting to come down and murder them when the time is right. Not that it's not right now. I just have some things I gotta get together first.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Florida, if they did film there, wouldn't have been difficult to get. But yeah, it just sucks, basically. But they did make a point. Also, the scientist, I wrote multiple times, what a freaking weenie when it comes to all the dudes, all of those men, weenies with smell. Like they later on, they're cutting open the tiger shark and they're like,
Why was it
like,
milky?
I'm like, yeah, it stinks.
Yeah.
For sure. But like, come on.
Are shark stomachs milky like that? I've never dissected like a big shark, but that I was
Um,
like, what is happening?
I wouldn't say
It just looked like milk pouring out of
that.
it.
I think that was a little bit of movie magic. There's
Okay.
definitely some liquid that probably will spill, but it's not gonna. I mean, I guess if they ate something and it like was mid dissolving, like if it was a
It's
really big
gross.
meal or something. But
Yeah.
even then, I think it tends to be more paste like.
Mm-hmm.
But I've only
Also, his dissection method wasn't the most advanced, or
no.
just
I mean,
taking a knife to the side of it.
yeah, whatever.
He's a really good
But
researcher.
yeah, super good. Such a good scientist.
This is exactly what
Super
we should
accurate.
be
They
putting up
definitely
there.
had someone consult to make him accurate.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the guys were just such weenies. Even later on when they're on the boat and the sheriff's like spooning out the chum, I'm like, and he's like sniffing a cloth to like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
To keep from gagging.
weenie. And then this is where they say like tiger sharks are the garbage cans of the ocean, and they really try and spin it in this sort of like they'll eat anything, watch out kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The reason tiger sharks are nicknamed the garbage cans of the ocean, yes, there have been documented cases of tigers that have eaten license plates and other inanimate objects. So have pretty much any other animal in the ocean at this point.
Yeah.
So they're all a garbage can if you're considering eating plastic.
To make him a garbage can.
Yeah. The reason that nickname is more accurate though is more so because tiger sharks eat really dead things. Like they're very much a scavenging shark species. I have seen them go after live stuff, but more than likely they're going to prefer to eat the rotting carcass on the bottom of the ocean versus some healthy animals swimming around. So that's more so where they get the garbage can name, because they're kind of like the cleaner uppers of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Less so because they'll eat anything, even though they're not a very specific scavenger. Like they'll kind of eat anything that's dead, really, but they're still not just like eating anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they cut open tiger shark. It's the wrong shark, which scientist was already saying it's the wrong shark. And knowing what the movie's about, we already knew it was going to be a white shark.
Mm-hmm.
But they then are like, all right, we got to go on the hunt for this white shark. And so the scientists and the sheriff set out at night to go and try and find this white shark. And they're searching around and they come across one of the other fishermen's boats that has been like destroyed, basically. Yeah. And scientists like, I'm gonna dive down there. I have to see what's going on. And he goes down and he finds this big bite mark taken out of the boat, and there's a tooth from a white shark. And I immediately was like, a tooth! It's like, get the tooth!
The best reward.
I was like, I love shark teeth. So I was like, tooth. Don't. And then of course he freaking drops it. Another weenie.
Because dead Mike, I wrote down.
Like, don't get me wrong. I would have also been terrified if a man's head floated out from underneath the boat into my face. But you best believe I'm not dropping that tooth.
I wrote, apparently Jaws killed Michael Myers because the dead guy looked like Mike Myers from he did. I was like, what the heck? That was the only thing I could think of.
I wonder if that's like the only head they had left at the prop studio. They're like, this will work.
Throw it in.
Oh my god.
They just popped the eye out, but I was like, this literally looks like Mike Myers. And then I pulled up a picture and I was like, this is him.
Oh, that is so funny.
Yeah, he dropped
Yeah.
the tooth. He fumbled.
But
He
he
fumbled
drops
the
the
bag.
tooth. It's just so unfortunate. So they go back again to the mayor and they're like, come on, like you have to close the beaches now. Like we know it's a white shark. You didn't catch the right shark. We can prove it to you. And he's like, well, where's the tooth that you speak about? And he's like, well, I dropped it.
Sorry, I dropped it. A dead
And he's
guy.
like, well, then I don't believe you. Yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. Or he
This was when he
basically,
was wearing his anchor suit. And I was
an
like,
anchor
what the
man,
heck,
you may
dude?
say.
Literally.
But yeah, so the mayor basically is like, I'm not closing the beaches. So you can do, he's like, I'm not going to do anything about it. So if you want to do something about it, do something about it.
I just was like, there's already there were two people. How many people had died at this point? There were like the woman in the beginning, the kid, which I'm like, the kid itself, everyone
I
watched that.
think,
Did that one fisherman,
well, the fisherman's dead.
Mike Myers, the boat
Mike
guy's
Myers
dead.
is dead.
There was that one on the dock though, when like
Oh
the
no, I
shark.
think they made it away.
Okay. There's a
But
lot of things though where like people have disappeared or died. Maybe
right,
you should.
right. So definitely would have probably been wise to close the beach, considering I've seen them close the beaches here in Hawaii for a shark swimming by.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, Mayors is like, I'm not closing the beach. So a better idea, instead of closing the beach and at least letting your people sit on the beach and not go in the water
Mhm.
on 4th of July, was to let them go in the water, but have 20 boats with guns on them.
Yeah.
Because
That's a solution.
seems smarter. Uh, or more enjoyable for families.
It's a really nice view just to look out on as your kids are playing in the water.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it was horrifying. But they do say something about like they're like yelling at each other going back and forth, and they say something like, this thing was bred to be an eating machine. It is a miracle of evolution, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And not an eating machine. Yes, a miracle of evolution though. So I was like, I half agree with you. I was
Mhm.
like, you're right. Super amazing animal, been evolving for millions of years. They are perfect for their environment.
Yeah.
Not exactly an eating machine, but you almost made it.
You were almost there.
You were almost there, and then you just went one step too far.
Yeah.
Oh, also the mayor, bleh, so gross. I had to write it down because I was like, super misogynistic.
Mhm.
He goes, here's to swimming with bow-legged women.
Ooh.
And I was like, bleh.
I was laughing at him like peer pressuring his friend to get in the water.
His friend's
I
like,
was like,
okay.
what a good, you're such a nice guy. Wow. And how he's like, make them get in the water. I'm like, how does that give you any money? Like they're on the beach. It's not like
Yeah,
once
I'm like,
like
already
they're in the
here.
water, you get like 5 cents
I
for
think
every
the idea
second.
is that it was only July. And so it was like, if they have a bad time on July 4th, they won't come back the rest of the summer or something, or they won't tell their friends. And I don't know.
You can
Basically,
have
he
fun on the
cared more
beach.
about the money of the town than he did about the shark.
Yeah.
And so then they finally are like, all right, we gotta, after 4th of July, shark makes it into the lagoon
Mhm.
or something.
Yeah, the lady screaming, there's a shark in the
Well,
pond.
basically, some kids go to play a prank, and that distracts everyone
I thought
from
it was
real sharks.
I thought it was the sheriff's kids.
No, I think the
Because
sheriff's kids were on
they
the
all just
boat,
looked
weren't
the same.
they?
Yeah, one of them was, the other one was on the
They
beach,
all
but
looked the same to me.
they all look like the same kids.
Yeah. But basically, now the shark gets into the lagoon, he eats the fishermen right in front of the other kids,
Mhm.
and then doesn't eat the kids, and then swims away.
He's just there to intimidate them.
Yeah, I don't know. But basically, then they're like, this is the final straw. We're closing the beaches, as if the other 3 people were chop liver compared to this dude.
Yeah.
They close the beaches, and then they're like, all right, we're gonna go reach out to creepy fisher guy, and we're gonna go hunt the shark. And so they go out and they're looking around, and then they find the shark, and they're trying to kill it, And it is like the sheriff is like, I want to kill the shark.
Mm-hmm.
The fisher guy is like, I want to land the shark, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then the scientist guy, it appears like the scientist is wanting to document the animal, but also is like down to kill it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It's just kind of a weird representation of what a scientist would probably realistically want to do with it.
Yeah.
And they basically show the shark like full on charging the boat. And I was like, that's not super normal. Like sharks don't typically just swim like with their dorsal out of the water, like straight at something.
Yeah.
It happens, but it's not normal. Like it was
Yeah.
happening over and over in the movie. And then they're like, we have to attach the jugs. So they like spear him and it pulls a jug into the water, which is basically just a dramatized version of what jugging is.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know if we've talked about previously.
I don't think we have.
I know I've talked about it with friends and family because it recently happened here in Hawaii where a friend cut a jug off of a shark.
Mm-hmm.
Jugging is a really common way I wouldn't say a really common way. It is one of the many ways that humans will purposely kill sharks. It's unfortunately kind of the cop out to just killing the animal straight up. It leads to a really long, slow, painful death.
Yeah.
Because essentially what jugging does is it holds the animal at the surface. So what we see it a lot is with like smaller species, they'll attach things like milk jugs or like gallon jugs.
Mm-hmm.
And it essentially prevents the shark from leaving the surface, hunting effectively, hunting anywhere other than the surface. And it can also lead obviously to things like entanglement or exhaustion from lugging around this object, or either from panicking of still being caught on the line. So it's really crappy way that people will kill sharks, and unfortunately we see it a decent amount out here, which sucks. But yeah, so they were essentially trying to jug the animal so that way they could pull it up onto the boat. One jug didn't work, two jugs didn't work, three jugs didn't work. Or the animal, like they propose it as the shark is really smart and will like pull the jugs down and then like let them up like he's all tired and then come in and like try and attack them basically.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about that.
I highly doubt it.
Yeah. And they're telling like old fish tales and things like that while they're waiting at night for the jugs to resurface and things like that. And they talk, the fisherman, I believe, was talking about how the shark's eyes are black the moment they want to attack you or whatever. And I was like, that's not true. They did
From
mention,
Nemo.
and then their lids go white, and I was like, huh, nictating membrane. But white sharks actually have blue eyes. They're really, really pretty if you see videos of them up close. Tiger shark eyes are like kind of this like amber brown. But all shark eyes are specifically designed for specific purposes. So tiger eyes, part of why they're that ambery color, they're typically better in low light environments. So murky water, evening, nighttime kind of stuff. Whereas like your white shark, even though they do live in those like murkier environments in some areas, they typically live more offshore versus more coastal, where there tends to be that more stirred up water. So they have really like precise vision, especially in those like daytime environments. So they're not just like black holes. The Galapagos sandbar's eyes are really beautiful. They're kind of that like cat shape.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they try and catch the shark. At some point the scientist is like, you guys suck, we're gonna instead try and I'll go in the cage and I'll spear him in the mouth with this toxin or whatever. I'm like, okay, that seems like the easiest way to do this for sure.
Makes a whole lot of sense.
And so he gets in the cage and I'm just like, we're gonna have a 47 meters down moment, aren't we? And oddly enough, we definitely do, because white shark, piddliest little cage I've ever seen. White shark
is so
eating the crap out of the cage, breaks it open. He's trying to like get out of the cage so he doesn't get eaten. He's like stepping on its head. And he swims and hides behind a rock. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell, but that is something that we were like, when we reviewed 47 meters down, we were like, why are they hiding from a shark behind a rock? Because that's going to do so much for you. But it worked for the
hide and seek. Yeah, the shark was like, okay.
He swam behind the rock, and I don't know. But I was like, all right, it's one way to do it.
The shark decided to go for the easier prey that were on the boat than the one that was in the water blowing bubbles.
Yeah, I don't know, whatever. But yeah, so basically he escapes after the shark gets through the cage. This part, they really dragged out this whole fishing the shark part. This movie could have easily been an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, the last that was all like 30 minutes. Just this like final battle. And I was like, could have cut it.
Or even just honestly the whole time they're fishing the shark and attaching all the jugs and things. I'm like, we did not need 45 minutes to an hour of this.
You have to build up the suspense.
Yeah, I don't know, whatever. But it was a long movie. It's a long movie.
It's really long.
And it definitely could have been shorter. But yeah, so he starts going for the guy on the boat. Boat's falling in the water. It's sinking. He's going down. He remembers that they've got the scuba tank on board. So he throws the scuba tank in the mouth of the shark. And then he's trying to like shoot it with his little gun to make it blow up. And that's basically how the movie ends. He eventually shoots it and the shark just
blows up.
Obliterated.
A lot of blood.
But shark dies.
Yeah.
Oh, he ate the fisherman in the whole process. I don't know if we discussed that. It was pretty. He like chomped him in half.
Yeah. And just swam off with him and then came back for more.
But yeah, so and then the movie just ends.
Yeah, I almost texted you and I was like, that's how it ends. Like,
yeah. Well, they like start swimming back to shore and then it's just
they're like joking. He's like, I used to hate the ocean. Like, what?
Yeah.
Not even like a little reunion with your family.
Not even a
grateful town
whatsoever.
The mayor apologizing.
Like, you just saw a man eaten in half and you're just chilling.
We need like Jaws 2 where they're just dealing with like PTSD and emotional trauma and learn that sharks are not evil.
And a Jaws 3.
Also, they brought up territories, which from my understanding of sharks, which is more limited, that's more on reef species than pelagic, which is what like a great white is.
Yeah, so pelagic, I would say it's pretty unlikely that a white shark would experience territorial behavior. It's possible, but I would say it's probably less likely than a species like, I don't know, this is a bad example to compare to a white shark, but a white tip reef shark.
Yeah.
Because great whites tend to be much more migratory. So they're typically not sticking around in the same exact spot over and over and over again. Clearly, this shark is an exception to that, as it's been chilling here for the last week or so. So sure, maybe it would show some territorial behavior. But typically, we're going to see that more so in species like your white tip reef sharks, or I would say more your classic reef species, because they tend to kind of stay and live in one area.
Yeah.
Like white tip reef sharks, a lot of times here, they kind of swim down and they claim this little cave and they're like, this is my cave. Stay away from my cave. Whereas something like your great white shark, or even like tiger sharks, or, just animals that tend to migrate more, you're probably less likely to see territorial behavior from them because they don't actually really have a territory that they call home.
Yeah.
They could still be really competitive with other animals because they don't have a territory that they call home. They're pretty much just roaming in search of food. So if there was something in between that animal's ability to get that food, they could definitely be competitive. Um, we see that a lot with like oceanic whitetips. That's a lot of times why they have such intense behavior, because they live out in the open ocean where food is relatively scarce compared to something like a reef. And so almost anything they encounter, they immediately assume is competing with them for whatever resources could be in the area.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely, I guess, like in this situation with this particular white shark that's hanging around here, maybe there's some territorial aspects to it. I would say it would have been more accurate to just claim it as like a rogue shark thing.
Yeah.
Which they kind of do, but he tries to explain it as like all sharks will do this if you let them.
Mm-hmm.
Just like not
Which
true.
isn't true.
So I don't know. But as a whole, I thought this movie, at least, I mean, is it a really important part of like film history? Yeah. Is it kind of a big thing in shark conservation? Yeah, because it was basically the start of people really, really disliking sharks, or at least brought negative shark media to a wider audience, I would say, is probably a better way to put it. Whereas I'm sure people dislike sharks previous, but if you didn't live in a coastal area, you probably didn't really.
Yeah, this gave like a
care.
justification almost for people to be scared of sharks.
Yeah. So in terms of that, like obviously it played a pretty pivotal role in just like the history of understanding sharks and protecting sharks and all that kind of thing. But I just thought it honestly like didn't really, this is gonna piss a lot of people off. Didn't really think it was that good of a movie.
Yeah, I think it's just like,
Just basic.
yeah, it's just long, and I can appreciate like the Moby Dick parallels just because, yeah, I like literature and I like film. And I liked some of the shots. I thought some of the cinematography was pretty good for a movie that came out, I think, 75 when I looked it up.
Oh yeah, no,
I appreciated the soundtrack. I
it was
always love
groundbreaking in terms of just the filmmaking aspect of it for sure.
John Williams.
I can
love
appreciate
him
the
as
art
a
of it.
composer.
100%.
But yeah, I was like, this, I probably wouldn't watch it again unless I was like hanging out with friends and you're like, haha, let's watch Jaws.
Yeah. I can definitely appreciate the art of it. Like the filmmaking, the good props for the time, like all of the special effects, all that stuff. Like I can really appreciate that sort of thing. The score obviously is iconic, as that song is, forever.
It got really chipper sometimes. Like during the shark fishing part, the music was almost like Disney-esque. And I was like, why is this music so happy?
Yeah.
Like,
but yeah, it definitely, I mean, I don't know. I thought it was meh. Yeah, I mean, I understand why if I had watched this in the 70s, I would have been like, I'm not going in the ocean.
Well, it's like with movies. So in the 60s, or maybe it was 70s, there was the movie Orca, which was essentially a very similar movie.
Basically Jaws, but killer
basically
whales.
Jaws, but with killer whales. But it's obviously there's been a huge twist in how we perceive killer whales in the world and the media. And part of that is just because killer whales have that marine mammal behavior and have become likable as compared to sharks, which mostly haven't.
Yeah.
Which I just wonder, like, what would it take to get that PR twist for sharks?
And I mean, we've been seeing it a little bit. It's just, I don't know. There's this sort of like fine line, And I mean, I'm sure if you talk to someone that works with orcas, they would say that they have almost the opposite problem of what we have with sharks, where people love them so much they don't respect the fact that they're dangerous.
Well, yeah, I mean, people still argue very passionately that no, there's no recorded killer whale attack in the wild. There's technically one. I also count
Well,
any kind of
we could go
aggression
on.
to boats.
Yeah,
But
we could
like,
go on forever
well, same
about
with like
how
dolphins.
dolphin and whale behavior is misconstrued as play or friendliness when in fact it is the clear opposite if you have any understanding of dolphins.
Mhm.
But I think that's sort of, this movie created sort of the opposite narrative in sharks, right? Like they're monsters, they're really scary. And I do think we're seeing some change. Like people are starting to become more interested in them, if anything else, you know. They may
Yeah.
not love them just yet, but they're at least curious about the animals.
They tolerate them.
Yeah. And I think it's sort of this, for so long the narrative has been they're not monsters, they're not monsters, they're not monsters. And now, because we are slowly starting to see more people care about them, now we're trying to sort of like, how do we be in the middle ground, you know? Like, how do we,
They're
and
not
for me, it's
monsters, but they're
important.
not puppies.
Yeah, and for me, that's always important. Like at the end of every single tour that I take, I'm like, hi, I hope you guys saw that they're not just mindless man-eating machines. Please understand, though, that they're still very capable animals that could hurt us if they wanted to. The
Mhm.
reality is they just don't
Yeah.
most of the time. And so I think that's sort of this like trail or this line that we're sort of trying to balance of, okay, we're there's still people out there that are really, really scared of sharks. I see it every single day, terrified to even put their head in the water.
Mhm.
But you also have people now that really, really love sharks and they're like, I want to go swim with them all the time. Like there's some puppy dog, you know?
Mhm.
And so it's like, how do we express how cool they are and how amazing they are and how they're not just out there to eat you, but that they're also very capable and could hurt us if they wanted to. So
Yeah.
um it's an interesting line, but I think we've come a long way, at least from what the movie sort of started
Yeah.
in terms of public perception of the animals.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys. Well, thanks so much for joining us for this week's Marine Bio Movie Club. Next time, we are going to be discussing A Plastic Ocean, which is a great film. So we're super excited to talk about that, go into a little bit of marine debris and that sort of thing. So join us next time. And until then, we will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.